From the trenches of motorsports and Gearhead Central, this is RealTuners Radio, your all-motor, boosted, and nitrous-fed hour of power. Now, here's your hosts, the Reverends of RPM, the Faction of Traction, John Bewley, Scott Clark, Bill Fowler, Scott Evans, Mark Dahlquist, Mike Perduto, James Short, Tom Sewell, Brian Barnhill. This is RealTuners Radio.
Tonight we have a special guest. Jack Beckman is tentatively scheduled to drop in for a little while. So have your questions ready for a guy whose weekend race car makes over 9,000 horsepower. Thanks for tuning in. This is RealTuners Radio.
Just got told today we start reopening on Monday.
We got told today we've got at least
good for you.
Another 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks minimum.
Great.
So what's the story? I'm just curious out there in Facebook land that was one of the questions I wanted to ask everybody. What tracks are open, and has your state lengthened its lockdown? I just saw on the news here before we started that was it Riverside County? Is June 15th they're locking everybody down?
Wow.
It's not 100% lockdown, but yeah, it's Basque and a bunch of other crap.
It looks like the Las Vegas Speedway website, the track says they're doing their first Midnight Mayhem Friday, but I don't know if it's actually happening. I have to try to figure that out, because if it is, I'm driving up there and watching because there's nothing else to do. And I'm hoping they're open. Be nice.
We are pretty much operational down here for private testing. All the local tracks, by all of them, 3 will run a private test up to like, say, 20, 25 cars. But I just saw advertised, I don't know if you guys saw the COVID-8, Donald Long is calling it, since the Sweet 16 couldn't go off. He's going to do an RVW race here like this time next month, about a month away. Another no spectator deal, fastest 8 RVW cars on property get to battle it out for some money. All the stuff's just coming out now, but we're starting to get back to the point. You can race any day you want here now, as long as you're willing to pay for a private.
So Gateway in St. Louis hasn't gotten the okay. I just saw that Jerry 3567, thanks buddy. Gateway MSP Motorsports Park, I take it he's talking about St. Louis. Yeah, so trying to open, but not there yet. Bonne Terre, just south of St. Louis, was open this weekend. Now that's kind of cool, and they got in trouble for it. We're gonna have to hear that story. Isn't that Brett Kepner's favorite track?
Hey, Mike,
Because they're too close to Illinois.
are you able to say what it costs to do track rental for your local place?
Yeah, simple. Depending on number of cars, it's $2,100 to rent the track, and they'll break that down up to, I believe, it's 6 cars at $350 a car, and then beyond that, he'll come down a little bit depending on what kind of prep you're requiring. But I've seen it as cheap as $250 a car, but it never really drops below that point, because obviously as the number of cars increase, the number of prep needed increases with it. So it kind of flat moves there. But yeah, for $250 to $350 a car right now, you'll get, last time we were there was 6 cars. You could have made, if you wanted a hot lap, you could run every 20 minutes or every 20 seconds. You just literally hot lap around the track. You pulled in the lanes, went right to the starting line. There was no waiting at all.
I'd kill for that, as long as I had a second set of tires.
Yeah, the rental days are definitely, if you're serious about drag racing and you're serious about learning your car, there is nothing better than a rental day. You go when you're ready. There's no one behind you on the starting line. If you want to do 4 burnouts and 3 launches trying to figure things out, do it. As long as there's not another car waiting, and when there is, usually the car that's learning the starting line procedure will back up. Next car comes up, does his burnout, goes, and then that guy goes right back to doing his thing. It's the most laid-back, relaxed environment you will ever drag race in.
So
I like track days for that reason.
Yes.
speaking of testing and guys doing testing, have we shared that we have a special guest coming on in a little bit tonight?
I changed the thumbnail. That was about it.
Yes. Scott poked out around a little bit, but
yeah. So in about 7-8 minutes, one of everybody's favorite guests will be back with us, Jack Beckman, funny car champion, guy who came up like everybody else, driving his street car, becoming a race car driver, driving a little dragster, and then working his way up the hard way. Went in the military, did all of that, and then, has finally got to the big leagues, driving a funny car for the Don Schumacher team. So he's going to be back with us, talking a little bit about what's going on with NHRA, when the big guys are going to be back to racing, and all the other stuff that's going on. And I've never heard anybody do a better job explaining what fuel funny car racing is really about and how it works. So if you have questions about that, start thinking about them, and we'll tee them up for Jack when he gets on here shortly.
So they say Woodstock is still going to happen. That's good. Keith Berry's race.
I think you're beyond what the governors and the government and everyone says. I think people are tired of this, Scott. I think they're over it. They're ready to go out. They're ready to quit listening. They're done. They're ready to go back to just doing their normal thing.
Are they ready to die?
Well, that's what they want you to believe is going to happen. I'm not getting into the conspiracies, but that'd be a real long show. But
let's get into how immunity works, and maybe we'll have a 4-hour podcast at that point.
Yes, but I think everyone's just over it, man. You go outside, like the traffic's back up. I think Bill was just talking about that even out in California. It's people are. You can only spend so much time not doing something. We're a bred society to do things, whether it be go to work, whatever it is you do, and not doing it is going to be, in my opinion, far worse than if we all continue to sit at home.
I think a lot of people are getting to that point where they're just stir crazy too. And so some people are just going out to drive around so they can just not be inside their house. I went to go grab lunch the other day, and the traffic was just crazy. It was like 2:00 in the afternoon. And I was like, this is worse than rush hour traffic right now. What the hell? It was unbelievable how many people were out.
I will tell you, a buddy of mine lives in a certain island chain south and west of Florida. And he says it's like prohibition stuff down there, man. He goes, there's literally houses that we've all known are restaurants and stuff, but I shouldn't say the restaurants, but they're houses where like you're told, hey, come up to the back door and knock 4 times and then knock 2 times and don't park out front. And maybe they're serving food in here for money. Like they're going to do it themselves, whether you like it or not. People are ready to go back to normal. I think they're over it.
Speakeasy restaurants.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Well, I look at the statistics in our part of the world. We've had 186 deaths, I believe it is, and the population of Orange County, California is 5.5 million.
Yep.
And the hospitals are empty because they weren't letting anybody do, quote, elective surgeries. Now, by the way, an elective surgery, for example, a buddy of mine got in to get a procedure done. Remember, I'm old. So he had prostate cancer. So he just had his prostate removed. But today was the first day that he could do that after 7 weeks. So the hospitals who have 7 beds, so example, the large hospital near me has 7 beds with COVID patients in it, and the rest of the hospital is basically empty. Do you know how badly they're burning money?
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to business. People have to understand that that's how business works. We're going to have to get that stuff back in. People are complaining now that construction has stopped at Disney World. Like, oh, why can't we just keep working construction? It's like, well, yes, Disney has money, but you took away their income. They have no ticket sales. They have no food sales. You took away their income, so the cash flow has stopped. So therefore, they've had to stop outputting money. And the people don't understand how what they feel like is closing a non-essential business affects the essential businesses around it and what level of issue that has with the local economy.
Yeah, I think people will eventually get a lesson in real world economics. It's not quite there yet, but they're going to find out.
Yes, very fast.
Yeah, and all these businesses and people they've relied on. It's interesting. The one thing that has never stopped here are the guys that come and do our car wash. The guy that comes and mows the lawn. I'm gonna sound bad here, but the guy who comes and works on the pool, yeah, we're those people. But the bottom line is those people are still coming, and I'm glad of it, and we're making sure they get paid.
Yep,
So,
and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
So,
Scott Clark, your camera's like in slow motion, so watching you on the Facebook feed, like you have this like real slow moving around.
Low frame rate.
I need to just turn it off. Not really much to look at. I'm realizing I didn't even brush my hair. I was stressing so bad this last couple of hours. We're lucky this is working at all. This is a completely new PC I put together. I know I put myself through that, but
I only shaved and put on pants in case I stood up during the podcast.
Dude, did you see that? The guy that got fired for that?
no,
He didn't even know.
No.
So a guy was at like a Zoom meeting for work, and apparently he put his shirt and everything on, but had nothing on below, and brain farted and went to go get a bowl of cereal and stood up and was all up in the camera and went to go get the bowl of cereal and like came back to and just literally stood in front of the camera eating the bowl of cereal with nothing on below his waist. And
Okay, so maybe I wouldn't keep that guy employed either, because if you're not that aware, then what the hell else are you doing with the rest of my customers? I just that's slightly worrisome, maybe, huh?
People.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about? What's tech talk today? We're talking about all kinds of weird stuff.
I don't know. I think some guys got some questions before Jack gets here.
looks like Jack is here.
Let's
actually,
knock him out. Oh, is he?
He made it. Yep.
Oh yeah, he's here. He's made it. Looks like he.
Can you guys hear me?
Waiting to hear him.
Yes.
We
sir.
can.
How about that?
I
Even
like
better.
it.
Good to have you back, sir.
So did you guys see I cleaned up a little bit around the garage? I'm kidding. I'm being real sarcastic. This is like where I've spent the last 4 weeks of my life here.
Hold on. We'll ask him to start the video and see.
So Jack, that
He's on
makes
his
you
phone, so I
like
don't-
hot rodders all over the country who have been in forced seclusion. Is that the word? Or forced to realistically deal with the fact that the stuff they aren't doing because they're too busy. Now we have to get to it.
Well, mine actually goes beyond that, Bill. I sought this out. So the collection I had of older stuff was my dad's hot rod magazines. He's got August 1950. His dad bought him that magazine when my dad was 13. So on my social media a couple weeks ago, I had a picture of my son, Jason, who's 13, and I holding up that magazine. I thought that was pretty cool. But then he started subscribing in 51. I think I got all of his from 51 through 59. And they've been in my attic at two different houses for 30 years. I never opened them. They were just kind of an heirloom thing. I mean, I always read Hot Rod magazine, but I wasn't going to go back 50 years. I didn't know what I was going to learn. Well, then I got given a collection of drag news. And drag news, before there was a national dragster, from 55 to 78, drag news was the place you went for your drag racing information. And so I brought them all home. A lot of them are in plastic bags inside here. So I had to take everyone out, and Drag News did a crappy job of writing the issue and the date on the cover. So a lot of them I got to take out of the magazines, open them up, and I made a whole inventory list. But I'm missing about 150 out of about 1,060. So Don Hampton, who owns Hampton Superchargers, and Don Hampton is the guy that beat Don Garlitz in the first round at the 1959 March meet in Bakersfield. So he says, come down. He said, man, I'm in my mid-80s. I don't want to leave all this stuff laying around. I loaded my truck up with all of his periodicals, brought that back home. Now, his wasn't in boxes. His was not in plastic bags. His wasn't in any sort of chronological order. So I made piles of Super Chevy, Carcraft, Hot Rod, Drag News, National Dragster. Then I'd take one pile, divvy it up by decade, divvy those up by year, divvy those up by month, put it on my inventory list. And this is kind of where I'm at right now. And then I decided, you know what? I'm surrounded by all this knowledge. I'm going to start doing a video series. It'll probably debut next week, and it's going to bounce around between my Facebook, Dodge Garage, and NHRA.com. And I thought, why not use this info and help people kind of walk them up through the history of the sport?
Well, and while you have access to some of these people who know, I mean, the guy who lined up next to Garlitz and won the first event ever, you know, there's no replicating that. So
technically he just beat Garlitz first round. We'll call him a first round winner there. But you're right. It's history.
You know what I'm saying. Yeah. But I mean,
listen,
those are irreplaceable.
Yeah. I called Don Garlitz today. I had to go up to NHRA today. The offices are shut down. It's me and Phil Burgess in there, both wearing face masks. And he let me go through some of the archives. And because I want to have the period correct pieces here as props when I do this work. So one of the bigger questions is, you used to get a regular trophy until the Wally was created. The first race that was given away was Indy 69. I went into the proof sheets from Indy 69 post-race award ceremony. They gave him a regular trophy at the race, and the first Wallies were given away that night. I called Don Garlitz. It's the first time I've ever talked to Garlitz that he didn't have a name, a date, a time, a temperature, a price. Like, his memory is just uncanny. And he said, you know, I just don't recall that banquet that way. So I sent him some pictures that I took. So not only am I digging up a lot of things that are clarifying or re-educating me or correcting something that I might have had wrong in my history, but I'm also getting to do this real time with a lot of those first generation hot rodders are still alive today.
That's cool, and thank you for doing that, because, you know, sooner or later we're going to look back and it's like, oh crap, we didn't get this, we didn't know that, we didn't have this. That's pretty neat. And of course, once racing gets back to schedule, you know, then everything falls back into the usual cadence. It's going to be hard to do some of these special things. So at least you're doing something, how do I say this, useful compared to maybe some of us.
Yeah, don't say productive, because my wife's in the other room and she's going to come out and correct you on that. She said, great, when you're done with your little project, you can get rid of all this crap, so I don't have to worry about getting rid of it when you're gone.
Oh, so we get a 2-hour show again tonight. Sweet.
So, Jack, we got to get your video going here eventually. You know, your phone will work fine. You can just enable it.
Unless he's naked or something.
Yeah, well, don't do that.
I'm sorry.
I think
are you telling me that literally this whole time you guys haven't seen me?
No, we're not seeing you. We just have the name on the screen.
Okay.
Jack, did you call
thank you, guy on your tech side.
Did you call?
I got the phone number, guys.
I sent him a ask to
Yeah,
start
he won't have video.
Oh, so I sent you on the text message. We're displaying our technical capabilities for all the world to hear. But in the text message, there's also a link to the Ring Central app. And so if you want,
which is what you used the last time.
Yeah. So if you click on the Ring Central app, then it'll give you the opportunity to use the audio and the video directly through the app.
So right now he's just.
I did click on the app. I'm going to go call my wife. So literally everything I've done and set up here, you guys haven't seen anything. That's great. And thanks for getting the knife in the back saying the same one you used last time, because God knows I remember how I did this last time. Okay, so I'm going to hang up and try to do it better the second time. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Yeah, click on the web link version in that message.
That's hilarious.
I like this guy.
He's hilarious.
Oh, Jack,
that was shitty though.
Hold on, I gotta get my wife or my 13-year-old to show me how to do this.
I have 3 18-year-old girls down the hallway because they're all out of school and I've got nothing to do. So I understand.
What's up, Joe Biden?
Okay, I'm checking out. You guys talk amongst yourselves. I'll hopefully be right back.
Right on. No
problem.
Oh, that's funny.
Hey, there's a question on YouTube while we got a second. A guy's asking if any of you guys have heard or used of DataZap, a website that can take logs or data and translate it into a shareable interactive graph.
No.
Interesting.
Have them post a link.
Or they can't.
Post it on Facebook. If they're on YouTube, it won't load.
Oh, in the Facebook one.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm on there now, so it looks like Yeah, it's just a simpler CSV converter. I guess if you're limited with what you're using for logging, it is nice if you've got an ECU and you're stuck with their stuff in CSV. I'll take a look at it now.
Okay, Johnny Albers, you're about to get the real deal story on this. So,
Yeah. And Mr. Laws, yes, I was
that's Johnny. That's my
pants. Thank
buddy.
you very
No,
much.
I know Johnny. Yeah, he's here in Omaha with me,
Yeah.
man. We'll have to check
Eric
it out.
Yost is here. Biggin. Boy, we got all kind of the famous and the near famous on tonight. This is awesome. I
There's
guess it's
Jack
because
right there, man. Let's unmute him. All right, he's live. Greetings.
Hey, now he's getting
there.
there.
We go.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
There he is. All right.
Now we can see you and the hair of your lovely helper.
Oh my God. Okay. So now my routine, but I guess you guys can hear me.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Oh, you're in front of the Dodge.
Okay. What if I just yelled really loud? How's that?
That'll work. Sort of. Or lean in close. So for those of you who are seeing the picture, that is a Charger Hellcat wide body, which Jack will no doubt explain why that's sitting in his garage at some point.
Okay. Stand by, guys. Apparently we got the camera pointing backwards and no audio on my end. We're going to try this again.
I'm enjoying
Jack,
this.
we can hear you kinda. So
Yeah, it's because the camera and the mic are pointing out that's trying to get the car to talk. But I like the car
they're
picture.
showing us the nose of the Dodge and someone's long hair.
I'm going to assume that's 13-year-old.
There's
No,
a camera
it's live.
switch option somewhere on there. There he goes. That'll work.
She heard me. I heard that. She heard me. Eric Yost says, nice shirt, Bill.
Hey man, I wore that just for you, buddy.
What is it? Here, let's just message Yost and invite him to get him on here. He can talk some if he wants to talk some smack. Hold on, I'm gonna send him an invite. If it doesn't crash this whole thing.
You have to keep telling him you heard Rick Prospero's wagons faster than the Dirty Bird ever was. That's all you got to tell him over and over
I'm
again.
not going anywhere near that.
I don't think that's technically true.
I don't think it is either, but you can't. It doesn't matter. Does that really matter? Someone says drink. Absolutely. That sounds like a wonderful idea. I need to go get one.
Hey, guys, I'm going to hang up. I'm just going to have to figure this out, okay? Because this isn't going to work the way I got it set up. I apologize. So
It actually was working.
Yeah, no
all right,
worries.
We could,
Take your time.
yeah, take your time. We got
Jack.
hours. We got all night. We're just
We will
BS
be
and
here.
answering questions, so it ain't no rush.
In the
Hey,
meantime,
just like we did
tonight's
last time,
broadcast
we'll
is
put this
brought
thing
to you
on.
by Four Roses.
I dig
Small
it.
Batch Select.
Have a drink. Cheers.
I only have so much left in my keg. I don't know how much I can drink.
Yeah, that was a keg.
Well, I mean, it's a lot easier than bottling when you brew your own.
I
So
was just
mainly
gonna
it's out of
ask.
laziness.
I could see Brian brewing his own. Yep.
I can too.
Cool.
Hey, Scott Liggett. Good to have you on, buddy.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, so looking through this data zap, I don't want to hate on that too much because it is nice. It looks like it's more of a
Here it comes,
sharing-
Johnny.
No,
Hold up.
It has the same problem as every other basic logging software. It's a nice way to share data back and forth, but I guess if you're sharing it with a group, it's nice, but it's just a little bit easier of a step than wondering if the other guy is going to import the CSV the same way. But you're still getting basic strip graphs and stuff like that. So, trying to move into more advanced analysis like you would do with, say, Race Studio or some of the Motec logging or something like that. It's not fixing that. It's just giving you an easier way to share it, which is nice because if you're working with someone and, you're just trying to explain a problem, I would see this as more to send to someone when I want to show them data, and I don't want to explain how to use a more advanced software.
There's an interesting question.
From
While
Lee
we
Connor.
wait, Is there any reason not to go for the smallest diameter skinnies on the front of a car, assuming you won't exceed the weight limit of them? I have a theory on that, but I'll let someone else go first. My theory is purely opinion. I'll preface that, but I'll let if anyone else has an idea.
I'd love to hear your opinion.
I'll jump on this. I want to hear yours, Mike, but because I've started talking, I can't stop myself.
Take it away.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those nights, guys. Be forewarned. Anyway, so if you look at a lot of the super stock and stock eliminator racers and other stuff where ET is everything, you're going to notice that they do not have small diameter skinnies. They actually have very large diameter skinnies. And the reason for that is a larger diameter tire effectively will roll further because of the footprint it puts in the beams before it actually breaks the beams. So you're looking at the front of my car only weighs 250 kilograms. Where in the world are you?
He's in the UK.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things is depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. The other thing is a larger diameter tire has less rolling resistance if it's at high pressure than a smaller one. And this again is going to get into footprint and pressure and a bunch of other things. So you're going to weigh a lot of things. And the real question is, what is the goal that you're trying to achieve? And again, that has a lot to do with, is maximal ET important, or is breaking the beams quickly and early important? And that will determine a lot as to what you want to do with front tire diameter. Mike?
Okay. Fully
I can
on
see
board
Jack now with his magazines.
Yes. Fully on
You guys
board.
want to start all over now?
No,
Yes.
go ahead. Let these guys finish real quick, and we'll line you right back up, Jack.
Fully on board with larger diameter tire, quote unquote, dragging the start beam a little longer. Absolutely. I'm not the biggest fan of a 17-inch wheel and a narrow tire. I would prefer a 15-inch wheel because, especially when we get into guys in the newer radio racing where we do away with so much front end travel, we're running limiters. We might only have 1 or 2 inches sometimes known, and we come off a wheelie or something along those lines. The only shock absorbance you have left in the front end is how much tire to wheel you got. And when that front end comes down, if you've got, I don't know, let's say you're running a 22-inch tire like you're talking about, and you've got a 17-inch front wheel, and you've only got 2.5 inches of tire sticking out each side of that wheel, you do not have a lot of oh shit room when that front end comes back down before it bends a wheel, breaks this. So yes, especially in radio racing, at least until the cars figure it out, I'm going to keep a taller tire on the car for all of the reasons Bill mentioned, but also to give me somewhat of a safety barrier coming down from a wheelie or an oh shit moment until that car is figured out.
So Jack Beckman, you've been racing for a lot of years. What's your theory on front tire size and diameter?
Well, I think we just had a bunch of oh shit moments from where I'm coming from. Jesus, guys, it's 2020. You'd think you hit an app that would give you video and audio. I don't know. I just tuned in the middle of what you're saying. First of all, our front tire size is real easy. NHRA tells us you're going to run a 25-inch or 24.5 front tire. So the rule of thumb is if you think that the stage beam is 9/16 of an inch off the ground, take the diameter of your tire, take a chalk line and draw it across the bottom of your tire 9/16 off the ground. The distance in inches is the rollout that tire has, or the free acceleration before you clear the stage beam and start your ET. It's going to give you a slower reaction time, a faster ET. So tiny tire, real quick reaction times, slows down the elapsed time because you don't have as much running head start. So if as a driver, I want a tire this big. As a crew chief, I want dump truck tires on the front of the car.
There you go. So Lee Connor, you're chasing a 1/4 mile record. In that case, you want to get you want as maximum time in the beam to get the car moving as fast as it possibly can before it actually breaks the beam. So,
remember, it's actually opposite. It's reestablished the beam.
Yes. So if you're looking at 22 and you can fit a 26, I would be all about putting that 26-inch tire on the front of the car. If all you're doing is chasing a 1/4 mile record, then go for the larger tire.
Well, yeah, do that, but then don't go deep stage. You need to inch that, like a Dan Fletcher does in Superstock. Your staging should take 35 separate steps, so you're just flickering the beam. maximum amount of rollout, maximum amount of running head start, best ET.
Stage like a turbo car that can't get his limiter right. We have to bump in 8 times to just get the beam tickled.
Yeah,
Stage like that.
Yeah.
So I think we've beat that topic to death now. Good luck, Lee. We want to see your record posted on here on RealTuners. Jack, what in the world is going on where you're sitting? What are all those?
Oh, I'm glad you asked it. Did we just delete that whole train wreck that I had earlier, or did people actually hear that?
People heard stuff, but they don't know what you said or what it was talking about. So it can't hurt to repeat it a little bit.
No stress. Low
Yeah,
stress.
boy, that was another friendly. Okay, so drag news 1955 to 1974. Hey, let's throw somebody else's dog into the mix. Why the hell not? This night's been going perfect. So, like I said earlier, this is what I spent 4 weeks sorting through. I got a pretty good collection. I'm trying to fill in about 120 missing issues right now. And then a lot of them I had duplicates of. A good friend of mine, Bob Fry, was the NHRA announcer for a couple decades and a huge historian. I call him for source information all the time. So he sent me a list of all the ones he was missing. So I have got 221 issues of drag news going to him that were all duplicates of mine. Like, I don't mind sharing all this. I don't even know why the hell I did this, but now I feel like I've kind of been painted into the corner as the de facto librarian and archivist. So I'm going to help preserve this history. I've started reading some of them. I don't think I got enough time in 10 lifetimes to go through each issue here, but I'm going to start this video series. I mentioned it's going to be on my social media, on Dodge Garage, on NHRA.com, and 3 to 7 minute videos each episode, and I'm just going to walk you through history. Like I said earlier, I was at NHRA earlier getting some research information in, and they're talking about the Wally Trophy. Trophies, used to look like anything from this to 6-foot tall trophies. By the way, guys, this trophy is on loan to me from Steve Chrisman. His father, Jack Chrisman, not to be confused with Art Chrisman. Jack Chrisman was 1 year older than Art and was also Art's uncle. And they're both in the Drag Racing Hall of Fame because they were both absolute badasses. But Jack Chrisman won that trophy at the Orange County Airport Drags, which would have been Santa Ana Drags, 1950 to 1959. There's no date on that one. But this trophy back here, this one is from 1958, and I know where that's from. That says LADF, Lions Associated Drag Strip. That is an authentic Jack Chrisman trophy from Lions, and it appears it's also a cup holder. Not quite sure what the trophy designer was thinking, but I thought this kind of stuff would make some awesome background and ambiance for doing this walk through history.
That is awesome. Holy crap. That trophy is legit.
Did somebody pass out?
I don't know. Where did
we all passed out.
No, we hear you.
Jack, I was going to ask,
when
is
are
there
you-
a chance we'll see your stuff at some point in all this? Just
Yeah.
asking. Scott, go ahead.
I was to say, when are you planning on doing? You were saying you were doing this like a podcast online kind of thing with this. When are you planning on doing that? When is that supposed to happen?
It should launch next week. Yeah, the guys at Dodge Garage have been helping me coordinate it, and then we worked with NHRA. And this is not a walkthrough NHRA history. This is a walkthrough drag race history. Keep in mind that in that footprint, a whole lot of that belongs to NHRA. It didn't necessarily back in the original days of drag racing. So I'm trying to do my best of painting an accurate portrayal of how drag racing went from Santa Ana Drags that opened in the summer of 1950, which, by the way, wasn't even close to the first drag races. In fact, according to my friend Brett Kepner, who's an amazing researcher, Ormond Beach, Florida was the first organized drag races. Go ahead, guess the year, 1903. So let's just say the first modern era commercial drag strip was Santa Ana. So I'm kind of starting at Santa Ana and working forward.
That's interesting. I can see the Santa Ana, what now is called John Wayne Airport, from my house where I'm sitting right now. And so, yeah, we all thought of that as ancient history, but Perduto, apparently the first drag race ever, right down the street from you. That's pretty cool. So Jack, can you, is the camera immutable or can you turn it around a little bit? Because I think people might be interested to see that car that's in your garage.
Didn't they see it earlier when I screwed up the camera?
Well, yeah, you can see that. No,
They
so
probably
something
wanna
at
hear
first I
about
thought
it.
it was a Viper.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, it gets to sit here till March 3rd of next year. I got it for 365 days. They dropped it off on March 4th, and it's been sitting here under quarantine. I actually did take it up to NHRA today, so I did get some miles on it. And that is a 2020 Dodge Hellcat. And so if you guys think I'm not a genuine, taking care of my sponsors kind of guy, that truck was paid for by my hard-earned cash right there. So,
Right
yeah,
on.
I really wish they would have given me like the 485 horse version so I could get in a lot less trouble out there. This thing is just absurd with 700 horsepower.
You better be driving that thing, quarantine or not.
Yeah, that's
Well, I
actually
tell you
the
what I was
first
afraid.
Go ahead, Jack.
What I was so afraid of was on the regular schedule, I was planning on driving this thing to Vegas. Could you imagine like having 5 miles of open road late on a Wednesday night and 700 horsepower? I'd probably still be in jail right now.
I don't know. Judging what the speed limits are on Massachusetts freeways right now, you can get away with quite a bit.
Or either
Yeah,
that or he's
I tell you what was
Jackrabbit.
Yeah.
a lot of the a little bit more relaxed
they're saying-
and only focusing on hard crime.
Yeah, well, no, not in LA. They're saying 2,400 tickets last month on the LA freeways,
Jeez.
cars exceeding 100 miles an hour. So imagine how much that ticket costs. Yeah, if they ever let you drive again. It's funny, I went through the McDonald's drive-thru to grab a coffee today, and it was a young girl that's handing me my coffee. She says, "Can I ask you a question? How fast have you been in that thing?" Like she knew what the car was.
Good for her.
And what did you didn't disappoint her, did you?
My answer was not fast enough. Yeah. Hey, Bill, I spent a lifetime disappointing young girls. What are you talking about?
God.
Oh, please. Yeah. So the big question, Jack, everybody is asking is, when are we getting back to racing?
I actually talked to Glenn Cromwell, the NHRA president, last week. And this is a long way of saying I don't know because they don't have control over what the governors do and a lot of the state and local restrictions are going to be. I'll tell you what I appreciate, though. And I'm critical of NHRA. If I feel like they've made a decision that isn't in the best interest of the sport, I'm not one to mince words on that. But then you have to be true to yourself and say that they deserve a compliment when they do good things, make good decisions. And when they came out with the revised schedule, which at that time I think gave us 10 or 11 weeks until we go back to racing, which is scheduled for June 5th in Gainesville, I really think they deserved a pat on the back for that. For one, they didn't wait till baseball or basketball or football decided it was safe to go back, and then NHRA kind of swam it under. They didn't even wait for NASCAR. I love the fact that we were proactive on that. I thought it was logical. I thought it was very reasonable. I thought they left enough time that we could let this thing follow the curve, come down, and we should be good. Kind of looks to me like the curve's a little slower coming down than most of us had hoped for. I'm still hopeful that June 5th date is doable. It's not my choice, and a lot of things will have to happen between now and then. We can't go back to racing without allowing fans in the stands. Our sport just doesn't allow it. You know, a lot of people say, well, baseball's going to do it, NASCAR's going to do it. They have television packages that generate enormous revenue for them. NHRA makes their revenue on the gate and the attendees at the track, and we own the television rights, so we're having to sell those commercial spaces to keep that going. So, I mean, fingers crossed it's June 5th, and then we go Gainesville, straight to Houston, and then to Bristol, Tennessee. They also, I thought, were had enough foresight in there that if we don't go back in Gainesville or Houston, there's slots later in the year to put those two races in. So what I'm hearing is they've got plan A as we go back to racing in June, plan B as we go back to racing in July, plan C as we go back to racing in August. And at some point, they're just condensing those races into a space where you're going to run out of room and have to get rid of a couple of races, and nobody wants to get rid of more. We're already losing 5 races. We lost one of the Vegases, one of the Charlottes, Atlanta, Richmond, and Epping. So that's already a bitter pill for those venues. Hopefully we don't lose any more.
Do you think you guys will get to do any
I'm
testing?
upset that I wasn't.
Sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, I'm upset that I didn't get to see NHRA 4 wide this year. I was ready to come out and say hi. I was going to walk over and get a, nice little pit interview with you to bring on the podcast. Thankfully, you're able to come on now. So we still got
Scott,
you.
I was so afraid you were going to say, Jack, your video hasn't been working for the last 10 minutes. Yeah. So what's happening is Vegas and Charlotte each have a 2 wide and a 4 wide. Vegas is giving up the 4 wide. Charlotte's giving up the 2 wide. Charlotte's going to run their 4 wide later in the year during what would have been their countdown race. Well, you can't run a 4 wide because the points are just different. You can't run that in the countdown. And I think that was probably part of the reason that NHRA said, listen, this year we're going back to what we used to run for a point system. Overall, high points for the season wins the championship. And I thought that was a great proactive and logical idea for them to go to that. Plus the fact that I'm leading the points right now, no argument from me.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah, and congrats on the great start to the season.
Congrats.
So now it's like, man, we had all the momentum. So going back to my earlier question, are you guys going to get to do a little testing or anything beforehand? And if so, where?
Yeah, right here. See the crate I'm sitting on is my simulator, and I can put on a helmet and a fire suit. No, there's no testing because right now there's technically no facilities open. Now, if I get too big a segue, bring me back to earth. There's a small racetrack in Clarksville, Tennessee, mom and pop racetrack that I guess the local government went in there and said, you guys are closed down. This was only a couple weeks ago. Yep. And they said, okay, all right. Actually, we're not a drag strip. We're a takeout food service. Yep. We have a concession stand, and here's what they're going to do. And I read this on the website. It was awesome.
This is a true story.
Pull into lanes 1 or 2, remain in your car. The attendant will take your order and radio it down to the concession stand. Then pull around in either the left or right lane, and the Christmas tree will let you know when you can head on down, turn off, and pick your food up. And then at the bottom it says, see how fast you can go get your food. That's brilliant. But the thing about it is there's no venues open where we could go test a nitro car right now. And I don't know that that's going to be much of an option before we would go to Gainesville. Now, that being said, Bill, the Indy racetrack is only 2.5 miles from our shop. If it looks like you might want to test something, and maybe it's 2 or 3 teams going out, and either you sneak under the radar and just don't tell the governor, or they say, yeah, it's okay for private test sessions. It wouldn't surprise me if some of the big teams go and do that, but there's no need for us to do that. If you think about this, when this whole thing hit, I had already flown out to Gainesville and got the notice that the event was postponed and got on a plane and headed home. Our rig was full of equipment and cars that had just come from a win and a runner-up and been completely serviced. We have our act together. We have tune-up data. We have all the right parts. I don't know in our particular case if it would do any good to go out and test other than burn up some parts and kind of knock the rust off the crew and the driver.
Okay, that's a great. You raise a great question, Jack. Do you have to knock the rust off the driver, or are you ready to go the moment you get back in the seat?
Oh, our driver continuously has to have the rust knocked off of him.
Is that what he calls it?
Well, so last year was the first time in my Don Schumacher career, which is going on 14 years now, that I didn't preseason test. So I was out of the race car from the World Finals clear to the Winter Nationals, and I didn't seem that bad to me. I do a lot of visualization. I got a little practice tree right here, but in the off season. Before 2020, we converted our handbrake from a pull brake to a push brake. Boy, you want to talk about having, 3,000 runs where I do this to slow the car down or to stage it on the starting line, and now I got to do this? Well, obviously I did okay the first 2 races, but now this break that we're going to have is longer than any off-season ever has. But before you start listening to me or John Force or J.R. Todd complain, remember, these independent teams, the guys that race 4, 5, 7 times a year, it's fairly normal for them to be out of the car this long. So what I try to do to stay fresh is several times a week up to several times a day, I'll pretend I'm in the race car and I'll go through all those motions of doing that. See, I let go of the brake, not this way this time. And just to make sure that my mind's ready to go and you've got that muscle memory ready to go into action again.
So, Jack, a lot of race drivers are famously superstitious. So this year, from the end of the 2019 season to 2020, you didn't do any seat time. Are you going to repeat that in 2021?
Well, no, that was 2018 going into 2019. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. We did preseason test going into 2020. But I'm going to tell you something. You want to talk about the definition of a self-fulfilling prophecy, superstition. It doesn't make any sense to me. What happens is you thinking about what you think might go wrong is going to ensure that something goes wrong. Now, it may be going wrong all the time, but you just remembered it went wrong this time because you were superstitious and worried of it going wrong. That makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you some things I do. I put this boot on first and this boot on second. Why? Because I lay them in the tow vehicle with the right boot on top, and when I grab it, I don't have to think about it. I pull it on, zip it up, then get the next one. So that is a routine, not to be confused with superstition. So I'm going into the final round at Denver in Funny Car in 2008. I'm in the staging lanes. They had just asked me if I could zip up my fire suit and do a quick interview with them in the staging lanes. Well, I at that point I had to put my boots on before I zipped my fire suit up because of the neck. But anyway, so I zipped it up, put it on, did an interview with them. And then they said, hey, time to suit up, get in the car. So I go back to the truck, get my helmet on, get my gloves on, start to walk out. I didn't put my boots on. So I turned to our car chief. I said, Jim, would you go grab my boots and promise not to tell anybody about this? And we won the race. I'm just saying it's easy to throw yourself off if you're superstitious. I just don't think it helps as a race car driver.
You've also had the opportunity to teach at the Frank Hawley School, which blatant promo here. I went to the Frank Hawley School. It is the best thing you can ever do in your life if you think you're serious about driving a drag car as an amateur, which I certainly am. But my point being, it was an amazing experience, especially around the mental things and the focus and how to do it right. You taught at that school for many, many years. Are there things, I mean, you're a hugely successful funny car racer. Are there things that you think are important to everybody who's watching this show who goes to the drag strip that they should be doing? Like, what are your top 2 or 3 things that people should be doing that they mostly don't do?
Sure. Driving a race car is a neck up thing. I know there's a shifter, there's the steering wheel, there's other functions you have to do in the car. But it's not hard to do those functions. You're not bench pressing 400 pounds. You're not pushing a 310-pound lineman coming after your quarterback. It is a neck up deal. If you practice doing it correctly, it translates into your body doing it that way. People have a completely misguided perception that if I can just get fired up for this, I'll perform at a higher level. You're not trying to block a 300-pound lineman. You have a steering wheel, a brake handle, sometimes a shifter, some controls in there. If you have a calm and focused approach, you will always be better than that person who feels like, I got to murder this throttle, I got to kill that guy in the other lane. People truly have it backwards. Now, there's a lot of your viewers and listeners that are going to say I'm full of crap. And every one of them is wrong. Period. And you could prove it with the doctor and some instrumentation on them. Do some electronic probes. You could absolutely 100% prove that. But what happens is there's so many of us that have such a hard time calming down and clearing our mind that we tip over and go the other way and want to smack our face and beat our chest. And what everybody's trying to do there is keep that little devil off your shoulder. All those negative thoughts that come in. The best way to do it is just learn to calm down.
I will agree with that completely. I found that when I'm racing, if I'm angry, I don't race as good as when I'm calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah, but your buddy won a race back in '89 when he was pissed off at the world and his girl just left him. So he swears to all his buddies, you've got to dig deep within you, get that anger out and direct it at your opponent. It's just backwards, guys. Do whatever you want to do. There's people whose minds you will never change, even if you present them all the facts and the proof. It's the way it works. It's the way the human mind and body work.
From a crew
Sorry,
perspective,
Jack,
just wanted
Go
to
ahead,
make
Scott.
an observation. From a crew perspective, it works the same way. Like literally what you need to do is tune out all that crazy energy that might make you do something passionate and just try to get all of your tasks accomplished in the time frame that you've planned as a group, and trust that the other guys get their shit and that the driver does his part the same way. And when it all comes together is when no one can beat you, right? It just reminded me of working with some cup car guys at Bonneville this last year that worked that way.
What you just said, it can't be overstated. So what the people, Bill, I think the big epiphany people have to go to the Frank Hawley School is at the end of this 2-day period and all this intensity about driving a car is it's not about the car. It's about me. And if I can control me, when I get in the car, I could do a better job. And what you just said about the crew, it's got nothing to do with the race car. It's got to do with human beings. You will be better at everything in your life if you take a calmer approach to it. Now, does this apply to a UFC fighter? Of course it does. Yes, they have to be physical and they have to be intense, but trust me, I've talked to a lot of these guys, that their fights are won or lost in the practice gym. And it's done by being smart and learning how scissors, papers, rocks work with your opponent and their strengths and their weaknesses there. You will be better at everything if you take a calmer approach to it. Now again, that 300-pound lineman coming at you, there's a tremendous amount of physicality. But if you shut down because you go into fight or flight mode, that guy throws a little move on you and you end up on your ass because you got burned there. You just have to be logical about this, be sensible about this, be cool about this.
Bill, before the question goes away, you got to ask him what Dan wants to know. You got to get that. You got to do it.
Is this why I can't figure out how to turn my phone on? Is that the question?
No. So Dan Parker, who is one of our frequent guests and hosts, who is also the gentleman who became blind as a result of a crash in a pro mod back in 2012, and has now recently become the world's fastest blind man, wrote on our text. And by the way, you'll see him in an upcoming episode with Jay Leno. Dan says, hell, I could drive mine with my eyes closed. Does Jack want to ride shotgun? So mine is a C6 Corvette that is setting him up to become the world's fastest blind man. Went 170 and change, Scott.
153.
Okay, in New Mexico before it got knocked out by the wind. Jay Leno drove the car briefly. So Dan is demonstrating to the world that, disabilities are not disabling if you're committed and do the things you need to do. And, you guys are like students of the same Zen. Anyway, so Dan is just saying he'd love to get you in the car with him when they're lining up sometime to do some testing or something with the Land Speed Race Corvette. I think you guys are cut from the same cloth. So that's what Mike is referring to.
Yeah, thank God nobody's watching this. Dan, I've got my eyes closed every run too.
I mean, technically you blink and the race is over, right?
They said, what did that run look like? I said, same as every other one. Have my eyes tightly closed.
Out of curiosity, so I used to work with a guy very closely. We all raced when we were kids a million years ago in Tucson, Arizona. And he progressed way faster than me in the sport. So ultimately was driving a 7 flat top alcohol dragster. And due to the situation with him just as a physical being, he would black out at the hit, which was a 4.5 G hit at a 7 flat alcohol dragster. You're right there and you see everything at the hit, and you have that perceptual advantage like fighter pilots. I'm assuming that we haven't had that conversation, but I got to believe that you're that guy because you've been driving for DSR for 14 years.
Well, first off, your buddy's bullshitting you. If a car's running 7 flat, it ain't pulling 4.5 Gs. My car at the launch is 4.2 Gs. And I guarantee a top fuel car, which is about 4.5, is launching quicker than that guy's 7 flat car. Our cars hit max Gs out about 300 feet, where it's 5.2 for a funny car, and probably, well, I've seen 5.46, so almost 5.5 out there, and that's when it's really impressive. But remember, I've been up with the Thunderbirds and pulled 9 Gs, and I thought I was badass because I didn't pass out. I controlled my breathing, and I thought this is pretty cool. And then it dawned on me that guy 3 feet in front of me was doing all the same stuff while flying the plane and talking to me on the radio, so I didn't feel quite so big after that. But the straight-on Gs that we pull aren't that big an issue. Now, your buddy might be part goat. He might have some fainting goat in his background, and that could have caused some physiological issues. But it shouldn't be an issue for the average person. Even the Gs that we feel, as ungodly as impressive as they are, after a couple hundred runs, you're like, okay. I mean, you think about on an average run, if we deploy both parachutes at the same time, we go from +5 to -5 Gs. So it's a 10 G swing in a period of about 2.8 seconds out there. That's pretty impressive, but it's never made me feel like I was anywhere close to losing consciousness. Remember, to do that, the blood's got to come out of your head. Okay, so in an airplane, they're doing positive Gs like this. We've got way more ability to withstand that than negative Gs, where the red out, where the blood goes up. What we're doing is it's pushing back this way. So I just don't see that as an issue. In an extreme case, if your buddy's in a reclining position and is getting some blood flow up there, I don't know. I wouldn't let him drive, though.
Gotcha. If you don't mind,
I meant with you guys like on the freeway. That's what I'm saying. He can race all he wants. I wouldn't hop in the passenger seat.
Okay, got it. Nevertheless, I think you know Dan. You've met Dan. We chatted at PRI. Dan is going to be getting to do this again. We got weathered out at New Mexico, but love to get you guys together for that. On the other end of all this, you are one of the very few, and let's face it, all pyramids get very narrow and very small at the top, but that has made it to the top of the pinnacle of drag racing. For everybody on this call tonight, and then who's going to download this podcast later, I don't want to say what are the secrets, but what has to happen for people to be successful and be able to continue to climb up that ladder and become the next Jack Beckman, the next Stevie Fast?
Is it possible?
A burning passion to the point where none of this seems like effort or work. It's what you want to do 24/7, 365. Now, at 53 years old, frankly, I'm just not willing to work as hard as I was when I was 18, working on cars, going to junkyards, pulling parts out. I'm not as willing to work as hard as I was when I was 26, going over to my buddy's house, working on those, driving everything I could up at LA County Raceway, because I'm a husband and a dad now. I have other things that take up my time and are big priorities to me. But when it comes to that race car, I am still every bit as passionate as I was when I was that 7-year-old kid that went to Orange County in my first drag race. This is what I love to do. Our travel sucks. The amount of appearances we make suck, and I don't mind any of it because it's part of my job, and I get to do the thing that I would have loved to do, done most when I was a kid. and I get a paycheck for it. You ask Stevie Fast, all those hours he works out in his garage, what he's thinking about is reinventing that next widget that's going to give him 300 so he can go out and beat everybody's ass next weekend. That's passion, and that's being driven. I'll tell you the things that don't help out to achieve your goal. Be a dick. Don't help anybody. You're rude. You lay on the couch wondering why life is passing you by. I talk to people a lot that I'm not denying that I've been incredibly fortunate to get to where I'm at. There's people with the same qualifications, maybe more than I have, that have never got the opportunities that I've had. Was some of it good luck on my part? Without question. But I also think you put yourself in a position to benefit from good luck. And that's not laying on your couch while life's taking place all around you. Well, except for now during the quarantine. It's okay to lay on the couch. But find something that you love, and that's most likely going to be the thing that you're good at. There's some minor exceptions to this. There's a lot of the greatest crew chiefs in drag racing to be drivers. And they realize real quick that, you know what? The line for competent drivers is a lot longer than the line for competent crew chiefs. And I have got a really special skill set that if I applied to being a crew chief, my pyramid is even less bricks than the great drivers' pyramids.
That's exactly why I'm a crew chief.
Right.
I'm not even joking, but yeah, I mean, that's something I haven't explained to people a lot. Like, 'cause every one of us has heard something, but some guy that wants to be the next drift guy or whatever, talk about what I do, and I always hear, oh, that's my dream job. And I was like, I always hate to like disagree, and I was like, because obviously I love it, and I'm passionate about it, but it's still a lot of work, and it's exactly what you said. Like, you have to be okay with not going out and doing whatever, with knowing that you can't sit on the couch, and I can't just sit here and watch all of Tiger King in one day or whatever, because and that's what
that's right, Joe Exotic.
Yeah, guys say they want to do that, but then when it comes time to giving that up, and and then balancing that, there are relationships that suffer with it, and sometimes I've got an amazing wife that can put up with a lot of it, but there's still some balancing I have to do, and I'm not always the greatest at it. But you have to realize that you're giving that up, and you have to have that conversation with.
It's a definite sacrifice to do it well,
and that's where my passion is. This is what it takes, and because I said the same thing. Like, I've gotten extremely lucky to get some of the positions I have, and I still couldn't tell you exactly how they happened, but out there all the time, and unless you're willing to do that, and you've got to be realistic with yourself, and if you're not willing to, it's okay to admit that. Just realize that. Don't, when you're 60 years old, don't say, oh, well, it'd have been nice if I got lucky and fallen into one of those positions.
Yeah, what you said is absolutely true. Yeah, we get guys that come to our ropes. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
We get guys that come to our ropes and say, I want to work on that car. I'm the greatest truck driver. I'm the greatest this. I'm the greatest that. It's like, okay, well, our guys actually do all that stuff. We won't hire anybody off the street. We'll either hire them from another team so we know they've been on the road, or we'll hire them off our hospitality. That young kid that comes in with a Western Tech or UTI certification, he's going to serve food for 3 to 6 months on our hospitality. Can he get along with other people? Can he be away from home in long stretches of time? Does he have the right attitude, and he's a hard worker? We'll find that stuff out immediately because he's doing something he's not passionate about. If he or she can do that well, then we bring him over and let him work on the car. And we'll teach him the mechanical stuff. Yes, you have to have some aptitude, but I'm going to tell you, the personality portion of it is highly underrated. You can't have a caustic person on your team. You have to hire people that learn to get along. Everybody's a great winner and part of a wonderful team in the winner's circle. What about the 4th race in a row that you didn't qualify? And people start pointing the fingers, and that just erodes a team. So having a good attitude, being able to work hard. Listen, I ran a sportsman car for 20 years. And I look back, I'm like, how did an idiot like me get to this point in drag racing? It amazes me. And I think I got lucky on a lot of fronts, but I also think when you look back, I worked a lot. I worked my butt off. I was kind to people. I helped without expecting anything in return. And I think I was paid back 100-fold.
Yeah, I think a lot of I've always had a problem with it. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Because if you're a complete dumbass, it doesn't matter who you know. It's not just about having
not gonna
rich
work.
boy connection.
Right.
It can definitely help, but like that's what I tell people. Like that's where the helping people out, being nice, and just being out there all the time. You're going to meet people that are going to believe in you, and they're going to give you that opportunity because you've got other qualifications. So I mean, that's exactly how I want to put in the
Which you
position
develop over
I am
time.
now. So yeah, definitely. You never know who's going to give you your next break or be the guy to stand up for you when you need it. So.
Well, and it sounds like such a fairy tale when people say you can do anything you want to do. You can be anything you want to be. It's absolutely true. It might sound like happy horse crap. It's 100% true. If you put your mind to something and you're willing to put the effort in, and by the way, that is two completely different things. You put your mind to something and think about the things it takes to be great at it, and then go out there and spend the sweat equity, do that. When those two things come together, you're going to find you're at the top of your game.
But going back to the same point where you say you got to be the right person, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you are the right person for that. Because especially my example being music industry, we meet people all the time who are unbelievably smart, geniuses in the world of all the technical stuff we do, and they're just not the right person for the gig. They can't hang out for 6 or 9 months at a time without going nuts, or they just don't get along with people like everybody else does. There's it's not just a combination of being able to do it, but it's being the right personality to do it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So go back to my story about the guy that started wanting to be a driver, became a crew chief. So that guy that maybe is not a good fit for a band or doing projects A and B has got the talent and the skill and the personality to go be a recording engineer or start his own record label. In other words, he's got a skill set. He'll find that niche, and he's working his butt off. He'll find that niche where he can fully exploit his skill set with the combination of his personality. You'll find that spot. You keep moving forward. It's that Tetris game. You'll find where your odd shape fits perfectly somewhere.
Yep.
So Jack, we were talking about driving the cars and all that sort of stuff, and that it's an above the neck thing. What's the step for people to understand how they translate what the car is doing to what they need to do to get the car right? Because the one thing I can say about Frank Hawley's school is the cars are so dialed, and I will never forget Frank. He said, if you have anything slower, 8 seconds or slower, there should be no drama. And I was like, oh, crap. And I'm thinking about all the drama in my POS. So how does what the driver learns to do translate into how to get the car to work right? What do we need to do? What do people need to do to understand how to make that explanation? And this is more about your 20 years as a driver of quote regular cars than a fuel funny car.
So how quick's your Mustang, Bill?
It'll run a high 8 on motor and a high 7 on spray.
Okay, so 8-second Mustang, let's put a back seat, the passenger seat in it. You drive, I'll get in the passenger seat. We'll throw a couple of guys in the back seat. And you make a run and something goes wrong. And we get out at the end of the run, and I'm going to ask the guy in the back seat who was on the phone talking to his wife, what'd you notice? I didn't notice anything. And then I'm going to ask the guy that was sitting next to him that was freaking out because he was so afraid something was going to go wrong. What'd you notice? Like, I got nothing for you. And I say, okay, Bill, you were driving the car. What'd you notice? Say, well, I had to correct when I went out there about 100 feet. And then I was so busy staring at the track trying to get the shift point right that I thought I heard it pop and I thought I felt something, but I'm not sure. And I say, well, let me tell you what I noticed. And I noticed it because I wasn't preoccupied with doing the stuff you had to do. I wasn't speaking on the cell phone, and I wasn't so afraid the world was going to end that I went in there with a clear mind. And I slowed everything down. On a good run in one of these nitro cars, it doesn't take 4 seconds. It takes 10 seconds to get to the finish line. Now, I have other runs that I leave, and it's like, oh God, oh. And I'm going to tell you, my recollection of that run is not real good. I like those runs where my mind has just slowed it down so much. Well, guess what? That doesn't happen from being distracted talking on the phone, worried about making a correction and staring at the tag, or being freaked out about what's going to happen. It comes from practicing a bunch of runs the right way in your head, and then getting into that car with a level of confidence that you will be able to perform the task it takes to get it to the finish line. If something goes wrong and I don't feel like I could safely get it to the finish line, I've already programmed myself. I'm off the throttle, on the chutes, slowing the car down. So it's a mental approach. If you go in there with a head full of crap that doesn't have anything to do with driving that car from A to B in the best way possible, you will notice less. You will have less feedback.
So I remember sitting in the trailer, thanks to you, by the way, at Phoenix, God, 2 years ago now, talking to Guido, which for the rest of you,
My crew chief,
Dean Antonelli. There's a long history and story there, which I won't bore you with. In any event, and they had up on the screen all the data logs, and the data logs and the information on a funny car are unbelievable. But they still have to translate that into what the guy could do. Now, a lot of the people in this audience now use data logs where, this is an EFI tuning podcast at its core. And we talk all the time about using data and data to learn, because we're not necessarily great observers. I mean, the first time I noticed that I had this bad behavior, the moment the car would act a little funny, I was lifting, and I didn't believe it until I looked at the data log and it was showing me the TPS, the throttle position sensor. I was like, son of a bitch, I'm lifting, and it's like, I didn't think I was lifting. I was just lifting. And so this is the part of the learned behavior and how we use technology to get better. So how do you guys use technology to get better?
Well, let's drill down on why do you think you lifted? In other words, you're saying you're rolling out of the throttle a little bit, right? You didn't shut off. You just rolled out a little bit, right?
Yeah, because I spent a great deal of time dealing with a car that did not, it would hook and then spin. And so I had unconsciously trained my foot. I didn't know I'd trained my foot, but to know that shit was going to happen because I hadn't dialed the car in properly. And so I was going to feather it a little bit because I was trying to run a drag radial, and that didn't necessarily work. But I was doing something that I didn't know I was doing until, and Scott Clark is the one who pointed this out to me. He said, "You idiot, you're getting off of the throttle."
Did I really say that?
And it's like, okay, so we got to fix something in the suspension, something in the tune, and all of that. But it took that to inform me about my bad behavior.
Well, so in essence, what you were doing was the right thing at the wrong time. You had a subconscious program. If I feel this, my response is to do this. But somehow you use that response and you didn't even feel tire spin. So you said, how do we use technology? Well, that's a classic example, right? Because if I said, Bill, if I didn't know better, I'd swear you were lifting off the throttle. And you say, shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm no sissy. I got this. It's like, okay. So we put some technology on and say, hey, listen, man, I'm not passing judgment on you, but your right foot's coming off the throttle somewhat. So we need to work on that. So what you do is you practice doing something the right way, right? Let's start at the beginning. You write out a menu for doing everything the right way. Then you read that menu 300 times. Then you practice it 1,000 times, and then you go out there and you have a good program for driving the car when things go well. And then what happens is you tell yourself, okay, if I'm driving and I hear the engine go up and I'm not getting pushed back in the seat so far, that means it's spinning the tires. What do I need to do? And depending on what class of car you drive, that could be nothing. I've got a rev limiter. That could be I bump the brake. That could be I feather off the throttle. That could be a button I touch on the steering wheel that takes timing out of the thing. It's different reactions for different scenarios, and you have to program yourself to do that. So first thing that you have to do to get better at something is know how to do it well. Second thing is you have to know when you're not doing it correctly. And the third thing you have to know is, how do I correct myself to where I am doing it well? And I know that's not a specific answer to your question, but with our cars with the data recorder, frankly, they don't really need driver feedback that much. We just went to the new style weld wheels, the Delta wheels. And one of the qualities of that wheel is, because of the shape of it, you can't tape wheel weights on it to balance it. So they will tend to vibrate more. So we have some sets of those and some sets of our old, I think they're Barrett wheels. And we had put some on for preseason testing. And I got on the radio after the burnout, and I'm backing up. And I told Wheel, I said, this thing has a bad vibration in it. And he said, okay, if it's still doing it at half track, shut off. But it turns out it's just that frequency on the burnout without the balancing, it goes away on the racetrack. So he knew enough about the technology that we were dealing with to give me an answer how to handle a problem that I was faced with. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Jack, I want you to pick up your crate, and I want you to move forward until you are up by the most near. Yeah, one more move. Yeah, because right now you've been sitting in the back of this hole. Now, one more. It'll feel uncomfortable, but move up. Now we can.
I don't feel uncomfortable, but I can't believe you guys waited 45 minutes to tell me that.
Well, we didn't want to insult you.
It's not bad.
You know? Oh my God. All right. No, we needed to bring you up a little bit. So, I mean, this is critical, because all of us that are listening to this and driving our cars and building our cars and doing all this crap are trying to figure out how to get better at what we do. And the feedback loop is where I think we lie to ourselves, or at least we're not honest. And I have a car that it's like, based on power, based on weight, should be going faster than it is, and it'll get there. So Scott Evans has volunteered. He's on the call to come and be at the track with me to help me figure out where my brain is not working and all those things. And so what I'm asking you, Jack, is what is the interaction that you have with Dean Antonelli? And I apologize for not remembering the name of your—
John Medlin.
Yeah, John Medlin.
Yeah.
What is the conversation you have with them to figure out how to make the car win and you win round by round?
Honest to God, if I only saw them on the warm-up and the starting line, those guys could still do their job fine without me. I'll go in, I have a logbook, I'll download the run, and I'll write down if I've got any thoughts of what was going in my head. If need be, we'll look at the video on it. But realistically, those two guys are so busy for 25 minutes after we run. I don't want to go in there and go, hey, guys, what'd you think? Hey, what about this? They just need to stay focused and do their deal. Where I do think I can do a good job is you spend enough time around people and you watch how the crew chiefs interact, and you can tell when they're less confident than they sometimes should be. And I'll say, I just my 2 cents. What would you do for the next run? I would add 1.5 grams to the clutch and knock 1/10 of a pound out of the tires. Okay. John, what would you do? I'd raise the wheelie bar 1/8 inch and put 0.5 degree of timing more in. Okay. Well, and just so what he was thinking, he's now aware of, and vice versa. Because he might say, you know what? I did that timing deal a while ago, and I like that. And then he might say, but you know what? That 1/10 of a pound in tire pressure, maybe we do those two things, not these two or these two. I think I can be a rational sounding board and help keep them focused. But recognize I'm not saying I do that all the time. That might be 10% of the time.
That's interesting. You know, I keep trying to relate this back to the large majority of our listeners who are the builder, the driver, the tuner, all those things. And how do we, sort of separate our functions, or how do we get calm about what we're doing in order to optimize our performance? So I'm going to dial that all the way back to, I'm pulling up into staging, and it's a race situation. It's not a tuning situation. It's not anything else. What are your recommendations for people who are trying to make sure that they perform the best in the driver's seat as they pull off to the line?
In most cars, you'll line up in the staging lanes, and you'll have 10 to 45 minutes from the time you get in the lanes till the time you're in the burnout box. I don't think you have to practice runs for 45 minutes. In fact, I think you'd burn yourself out. I think you can go out, walk around the lanes, say hi to your friends. You're using that as kind of a calming atmosphere there. If we tend to fixate and dwell on, did I get the timing right? Is this the right map I want in there? You can talk yourself into throwing up in the staging lanes. But then there comes a time as a driver where you've got to leave the tuner outside of the car. You got to leave the owner, the sponsor. All those guys got to get locked out of the car. And the driver's the only one left in there. And you put on your helmet, and now you're at work. And it's time to start thinking about everything that I'm going in. Is this a qualifying run? And if it's qualifying, I've already qualified really well. Track's a lot hotter now. And the car goes out there and starts blazing the tires and it's hazing it. Why would you stay in the throttle? Now, it's the last qualifying run. You're not in. The bump is super soft. It goes out there and strikes the tires. You can pedal it and still get in the show. You don't want to wreck your car. You don't want to do anything stupid. But you need to think about, I know how to do the things to drive the car. Now I need to apply those to what do I need to do to qualify the car. Then I need to apply those to what do I need to do to win a round in the car. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And oftentimes, if our car goes out and shakes the tires on Q1, I step off the throttle. Unless it's a threat of weather for the next day and we think we might not get another shot, then I'm going to get off and back on. But that doesn't happen automatically. I had to think about and retrieve that program for pedaling, which, by the way, always applies on race day, but it applies differently on qualifying days. I'm going to back up, Bill. Your question about using technology to get better. I think a video camera is one of the cheapest and best ways to do that if it's used properly.
Amen.
You can video runs, and typically the camera doesn't lie. You know, you tell the driver, oh, you went out there and it looks like you jerked the wheel when you shifted into second. No, I didn't. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, as cheap as GoPros are right now, put one inside the cab and look. Put one behind the steering wheel and look. Be very easy to look at that. Not to say, I was right, you were wrong. See, what you want to do is get to the solution quicker without the argument. In fact, I think that's the benefit of having a video camera. It's like, let's look at it, but let's all go look at it with open minds. Not you want to be wrong, I want to be right, or accusatory. Let's just go in and observe the video and then discuss what we viewed. And a lot of times you'll pick up a lot of tendencies you didn't know you had, and then you have to rewind and unlearn those things. So that's probably the biggest thing I've seen at the Holly School. That video camera is just, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth 1,000,000 words. And you'll get up to class and I'll ask people about the run. I was perfect. I was awesome. I was the man. Like, okay. You think you staged the car straight? Absolutely. And then you put the video up there and the car's pointed this way. And I'm not doing this to make them look like a dick. We want to show that your perception may not match what's taking place out on the racetrack. Now, that person's got the choice to get real defensive or to get better. And you can't be defensive and get better. The response should be, and I was the student of Frank Hawley's before I was a teacher with him. And he showed me all the things I was screwing up. I'm like, wow, tell me what I need to do better. Now you're starting to learn. So that video points out some errors. Then we start working on how to do it better.
Nice.
Jack, that's a really cool point. Jerry on our YouTube feed asked an interesting question. He said, do you ever suit up, strap in, and go through the whole run process in the off season? And you have been extraordinarily generous with your time and everything tonight. So we'd like to kind of finish on that question with you so you can get back to your family.
Yeah. And after that, guys, I can come back on next week. I got pretty much nothing going until June 4th. So, that's actually a great question. Because of the fact that we just switched to a push brake in the off season, I have a old cockpit. I think it was one of the Napa cars, and I just retrieved it from preseason testing in Vegas. And I'm still waiting because of this deal. The brake handles on back order and the mount for the steering wheel. So I'm building myself a cockpit simulator. One is to work on reaction times, just to keep that muscle memory going. The other thing really is just to keep myself comfortable with crawling back in that car, whether it be June 5th, July 5th, or August 5th, and saying, you know what, I got this. So, yeah, no, I'm smart enough to realize that I'm not smart enough to do this without a lot of practice. I am not a quick learner, but I think that makes me a good teacher. And I do practice what I preach. And I think that's why I can relate very well to students, especially those that are struggling. I've been there. I'm going to tell you, whatever way I'm wired, it takes me a while to grasp the application. I understand the concept immediately. It's the executing it well. It takes me a long time to get that process correct. So I know, and this is all the Frank Hawley virtues, that visualization. You know, you don't have to crawl into a funny car cockpit to practice driving a funny car. In fact, I'm sitting in a funny car right now. Why? Because I say I'm sitting in a funny car right now. I'm going to get my foot on the clutch, my other one on the throttle. I'm holding the steering wheel. I can feel those belts tighten down on me, and I'm on the brake lever. And I'm going to roll in and pre-stage, take my foot off the clutch. I'm looking that way because that's where the Christmas tree is. I'm going to stage, and when that tree comes on, boom. That's a good run because I'm good at practicing. And I can take advantage of sitting on a milk crate and practice driving a funny car. I don't know how many people do that.
I dig it.
Jack, that's
Muscle memory
awesome.
is everything.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, thank you. We should let him go.
All right, I'm going to go practice eating some enchiladas then. How's that sound, guys?
There we go. All right.
Good.
Jack.
All right, Bill, you give me a holler. I'll come on whenever, but I'm doubling my rate next time.
Okay, double. You have a commitment. Double. All right.
That's
Jack,
right,
thank
guys.
you so much. We super appreciate it.
My pleasure.
That was
Okay,
good. That
he's
was
clear.
really, really good to have Jack on again.
It was.
Yeah, that was fun. Oh my gosh. Well, what else we got going? You guys did a good job of sneaking the questions in there.
I'm wondering why my lights in my room are just flickering on their own for no reason whatsoever.
Right. So, anyway, keep us posted, everybody. We'll be back here next week to kind of touch base. I'm curious to see where we stand as far as looks like the states are doing a second round of deciding whether or not to open up, which of course affects classes and everything else we like to do. So we're just kind of sitting here in a hold pattern. Hey, in the meantime, do some remote tuning with any one of us on here. Pretty much all of us will do remote tuning of some type.
And I'm always available for remote legal advice in case you have shit going on that you're worried about. I am also about to, on Compliance Datalytics, post a whole set of things to prevent you from being sued for COVID-19 related issues. So
Very good.
my life sucks, but in that sense, I'm trying to save all the small business guys I know from getting sucked into the vortex here. So
Right.
that's my business. And in the meantime, we're working on our cars, and like everybody else is working on their cars. So get those son of a guns running. Look at how I cleaned that up. Aren't I great?
Yeah.
You did
Work
good.
on your cars. Use the time productively.
Yeah,
Maybe spend your stimulus check with a local speed shop, since we have to shop local. What's up, guys? You know.
Agreed.
Without a doubt, the best money you can spend your money on right now is getting your tuning shit together. Get the parts you need to make your car successful. Get out to the track. If you didn't hear Mike Perduto's comments on private track rentals, that might sound like something that's just completely out of your head. But right now, most of the tracks have no income and they can do private track rentals. So get together with your buddies and your friends and put this stuff together and get your shit lined out.
Support your local tracks. Support your local speed shop. Support your even local tuners. Whatever. Let's go racing.